Well, as New Hampshire voters get ready to cast their ballots in the first in the nation primary, Donald Trump tops the Real Clear Politics average of polls with a double-digit lead over his closest competitor, who's Marco Rubio at this point. But which Republican candidate has the most to gain in the mostly moderate state? Here to debate, we have Daniel Halper, the online editor at the Weekly Standard, and Democratic strategist Emily Tisch-Sussman. So, Daniel, let's start with you. What's your take?
I think the governors have the most to lose. Obviously, Jeb Bush, Chris Christie, John Kasich, they've really devoted most of their campaign to winning New Hampshire. Falling short of even a strong second or third place showing, I think, would be disastrous for their campaigns. It would make it difficult, not impossible, for each of them to carry forward. So they have the most to lose. Obviously, everybody's political life is at stake, everybody in the race, and everybody can really destroy themselves, but these people in particular. So then who would you say has the most to gain at this point? Still with you, Daniel. Well, Donald Trump needs to maintain his lead. The truth is, Marco Rubio, he's had such a bad last few days with the debate. I think it actually wouldn't be that difficult for him to overperform or perform where he is polling right now and would therefore exceed expectations. So weirdly enough, it could be, and obviously this is a little bit of a wild prediction, it could be that his bad performance lowered expectations, thus allowing him to be helpful, but obviously he's got some problems that he'll need to overcome in the long term. And Emily, what's your take on who has the most to gain coming out of this?
Look, I think the stakes, there are a ton of stakes in this New Hampshire primary, maybe even more than Iowa, because the field is whittled down a little bit. But yes, the governors have a lot at stake, particularly because they come from more moderate states. But I actually think the people that have the most at stake here are Jeb Bush, who still has a ton of endorsements and a ton of money, but is performing very badly. So his campaign needs to see, and his supporters need to see, if he can perform at all. And actually, I think that Rubio really has a lot to lose here. The expectation was so high coming out of Iowa. He still came in third. Like, let's remember, he didn't exactly sweep it. He still came in third. But everyone was talking. That was the big story coming out of Iowa, the momentum, right? The momentum of Rubio. And he had that not great debate performance in between. Plus, this is just not a state that's great for him. I think this will really be a test to see, can he be a more moderate establishment candidate and do better in states like New Hampshire, or does he only do well in states like Iowa? And so, Daniel, you know, speaking of someone who's moderate, Kasich, of course, in a very moderate state, where do you see him falling out in all of this?
I think he's going to have a good night. I think Kasich has been gaining momentum, and he's one of the only, I think the only independent-minded Republican in the race. It's not a huge lane, but, you know, look at John Huntsman. You can carve out 20% of the vote, 17% of the vote, and that could be enough for second place. That could be enough for a ticket out. I don't see his candidacy going further than New Hampshire, but I think he'll have a good night tonight, and I think he will exceed expectations.
Now, Emily, you talked about Jeb Bush. You know, of course, there's so much money behind his campaign. So could one of the big winners out of New Hampshire be wherever the money goes following the results of New Hampshire, regardless of who ends up, you know, in first place here?
Look, that's absolutely true. There's been a lot of chatter, not just of Republican donors who have been holding out, but those who actually got behind Jeb really early, that are now feeling like he's just not going to make it. They want to be with a winning horse. Like, they want to see who's doing well, and they're ready to move their money. There's a couple that are still loyal to him and will be loyal to him regardless, but really, they're just looking to move their money to see who can actually win in the general election.
All right. Well, thank you to both of you for joining us. Emily Tisch-Sussman and Daniel Halper. We will see how it goes.